Hey guys, welcome to another video. Purple Political Talk here with our friend UEP for our weekly Purple Projection podcast. UEP, how are you doing?
I am doing good, and I'm very excited for this episode. This is part 2. So we did this similar video for Donald Trump, 5 ways he can win the election, or he can come back. These are 5 ways that Joe Biden will hold on to his lead and win the election.
So yeah, this is a very interesting video. And I feel honestly like last time around was pretty much a lot of what-if scenarios. But the things we're seeing with this video are really likely because these are things that are currently happening and could be said that Joe Biden is definitely in the lead. Now, by how much is the question that a lot of people ask themselves. Nonetheless, I mean, it's important that we acknowledge that Joe Biden's leading, and we're just going to have to think about what things need to happen for him to hold on to his lead. So this is episode 6 of our Purple Projection podcast. We've gotten great feedback on it, so we did more for you guys. Me and UP have really enjoyed making them. I mean, we've become really good friends through this podcast and its creation. So yeah, so UP, do you want to say anything else to your subscribers?
Okay, thank you for tuning in, and yeah, I think we should get started.
So yeah, so we're going to start by going through and answering this question. What is a race changer? Just we answered this question also in our past video, but we're also going to answer it again. So what is a race changer and how does it impact the current status of the election? So UP, do you want to get started on that?
Okay, so a race changer in this scenario, well, generally, a race changer is something that changes the dynamic or focus on the race. For example, right now, the focus is mainly on coronavirus, which does not help Trump. However, like if it shifted more to the economy, that would help Trump. So that could be a race changer. It could be an event that happens, like a scandal, maybe like a tape is leaked of Joe Biden being corrupt or something like that. But I think in this scenario, Joe Biden doesn't want a race changer because right now he's in the lead, and if he stays like in the position that he's in up until election day, I think that's very, very good for him. So he doesn't want a race changer.
Yeah, I mean, so for Joe Biden at this point, he's sitting pretty. I mean, that's essentially what it is. I mean, usually for most elections, Democrats do very well when they're far out, especially in modern history with Obama, Clinton, and I guess this time Biden. And honestly, it's either they have very good scenarios or an event favors them at the beginning of election season, or if just the incumbent is unpopular. So we've seen those things happen. And a race changer at this point would completely stir up the race. I mean, the race has been a lot more stirred up than we would have thought. I mean, generally speaking, in 2020, this election, even the primaries, we thought it was going to be a long and grueling election. But at the end of the day, like comparatively, it's been somewhat of a calm election because we have other major issues. So, I mean, this election is already being affected by a race changer. Nonetheless, I mean, there is still a possibility for more that would actually keep on stirring up this mess that is this election. I mean, this election has been one of the craziest in history just because of the events that have followed up to it. And we're going to have a lot of interesting things when it comes to, like historically, after a couple of years, we're going to say, oh, the 2020 election was such a crazy election because A, B, C, D, E, F, G happened. So it's going to be interesting to see. So, UEP, do you have anything else to say about a race changer?
I'm done.
Oh, yeah, and I also want to mention, so for those of you guys that don't know, a big race changer that usually happens is an October surprise. That is just something that really happens every election that completely changes course. So, for example, in 2016, it could be said some of the terrorist attack along with the email scandals. In 2012, it could have been Benghazi. So those things really change. And those are some things that are definitely almost every time in the book. So that's something to note with race changers. And we usually do have an October surprise. We will not be discussing them in this video just because it's something that's very specific that happens and it's very hard to predict. So we're going to start by talking about our first race changer that would help Biden. UEP, do you want to take it away?
Voter turnout. So voter turnout definitely helps the Democratic Party because voters who are bad voters kind of, sometimes they vote and like other times they stay home. Those are usually young, progressive voters who aren't very good with voting in general, kind of like Bernie Bros. They don't have great turnout rates. immigrants don't always turn out to vote, and those are definitely big numbers that Democrats haven't really turned on yet, and they're starting to, because Bernie Sanders is having a unity task force with Vice President Biden, so he'll definitely try to help the Bernie Bros turn out for Joe Biden. And immigrants in 2018, they came out for Democrats in overwhelming numbers. This isn't really a race changer, but this does need to happen for Joe Biden to win, because if we have a low turnout kind of like we did in 2016 or in 1988, the year that Bush won a landslide, that's very, very bad news for Democrats. And just think about where they've won. In 2008, it was the highest turnout year since the 1840s, and even in years that the Democrats have lost, there's been high turnout. 2004, there was a big anti-Bush movement that actually started a trend, like in the Sun Belt, like Nevada and Colorado in particular had previously been thought of as safe red states, but those states swung to the left in insane margins, and while Kerry didn't win them, he set up a big victory for Obama 4 years later. So turnout doesn't only help this election in particular for Democrats, but it helps them in 2024 and so on. So if we have high turnouts, like something like 58-60%, Joe Biden will win this race.
Yeah, so since this election is such a weird timing, with COVID-19, we still don't even know what the election is going to look like, even 100 days out from the election, where usually we know where the polling places are going to be and stuff like that. So voter turnout is going to be something weird because of the pandemic. It may be that voter turnout might actually be low, although it could be quite high if they take in other forms like a lot of absentee voting and things like that, which I think is the way to go. And here's the problem. I think that the Democrats, honestly, if they have good voter turnout, they're going to win a lot of these races. And I talk about turnout in one of my latest videos about Florida and why I think it's actually going to go red. And I talked about how turnout is really important there. So if you guys are not familiar with Florida politics, there is 3 counties in the southern part of the state, which are the 3 biggest counties. It's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Those are the counties where Democrats rely for the majority of their votes. Just in Miami-Dade County alone, there's around 700,000 votes, which is somewhat a large county when it comes to U.S. counties for politics. It could actually be more. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was 700,000. But, nonetheless, we're going to look at this. So, for example, in Florida, the Latino population makes a big part of that southern part of the state. Democrats lost 2016 because they didn't do good with Latinos in Florida, and the trends are showing that they will. So, for example, state of Florida, because of turnout for the Democrats, especially by the minorities that usually do not vote, that's going to hurt them. And especially since the pandemic is such an uncertainty at this point, we really do not know what is going to happen, and we do not know how many people will or will not go out to vote. So, UEP?
Yeah, kind of like Purple said, this pandemic makes things so hazy. Like, we have no idea, what the political landscape is going to look like, even in 3 weeks or a month, because maybe there are the third wave of cases happens, or maybe cases start to drop. We never know. In voting, most of the country wants to vote by mail. I think 2/3 of the country does want to do that. But Donald Trump, he'll do everything he can to make sure that not that a small number, or that, how do I phrase this? He'll do everything he can to make sure that every person that's on the fence about voting doesn't vote, and that will not help the Democrats. However, the Democrats have all the tools they need to make, and if they take advantage of those tools, we can have insane turnout.
So yeah, essentially speaking, there is a debate on whether it should be universal mail-in voting or it should be absentee by request. And considering the circumstances right now, it's a hard question to answer, because then you have people who might get their ballots lost in the mail, whatever. That's one of the arguments given by the Republicans. But then the Democrats argue that everyone should have the right to vote from their home. So look, mail-in voting will definitely help the Democratic Party, although believe it or not, if the election ends up being by mail-in voting, it really actually might hurt them just because ballots might get quote unquote lost if they live in Republican states and things like that with voter suppression. That is something to note. So you.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of wrap up from my end on this topic. But voter suppression will happen, but Democrats can overcome it by turning out. The Republicans tried in some places to suppress the vote in 2008, but because the turnout was so high, it was virtually impossible.
Yeah, so historically we've seen that Democrats or whoever else is suppressing the vote, they can be beaten. 2008 is a great example. And just generally speaking, we're going to see what happens. With voter turnout, it's going to be hard to tell just because we're kind of in the age of COVID where decisions are made like day by day and we're still 100 days or less than 100 days out from the election. So that's something to note. So UP, can we move on to the next topic? I think you could talk about this one and introduce it.
I'm ready. The anti-Trump movement is a movement that basically occupies, I'd say, 55% of the country disapproves of him. I believe he has a 40% approval rating as of a few days ago. But the anti-Trump movement has been a thing since 2015, and it's only growing. Trump's approval has consistently, been falling. But I think, this will be. Joe Biden needs to make this a referendum on Trump because Trump is not popular. Like at his peak, he was 46% approval rating. That's still not very good.
At his peak, he had an approval rating of 50%, if I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
That was the highest approval rating during his administration. So I do remember that because his campaign went crazy bananas over it, and they made it a huge big thing because he was approved by at least half of the country. So yeah, keep on going.
Oh, all right. So, but Obama's high point was 61% approval. Bush at one point he had a 59% approval. So Trump is consistently below, by very significant margins, other incumbent presidents in running for re-election. Sure, there have been close re-election bids, 2012 was somewhat close in the popular vote. 2004 was very close between Kerry and Bush. But remember that in 2012, Obama had a 52% approval. In 2004, Bush had a 51% approval. Donald Trump has a 40% approval.
And the thing to note also is that just comparing Trump to other presidents have taken in crisis. For example, George Bush, the whole country gathered behind him.
They rallied around him.
Yeah, it was rally behind the leader kind of thing after 9/11. So, generally speaking, that's not going to happen this time around just because of how divisive both the Republicans and the Democrats have been. I'm going to cut off some slack for the Republicans because I feel a lot of people say the anti-Trump movement is just all done by the Trumpers, but I think it's honestly very it's understated that the Democrats, some Democrats, generally speaking, more of the AOC type who are a lot more progressive, they kind of don't care of working bipartisanship, and it's kind of I won't work with you, I won't work with you, so that kind of creates division in the country. So unless one of the parties completely cuts it off, there's always going to be anti-whoever president or whoever is the other running person running. So, UP, do you want to continue?
Yeah, so the anti-Trump movement is going to take place. For example, look up the Lincoln Project or GOP voters, or sorry, not GOP, the Republican voters against Trump, and they're big groups that, the Lincoln Project is full of conservatives who make ads against Trump and endorse Democratic Senate candidates, for example, and the Republican voters against Trump. They film videos of former Trump voters in 2016 saying that they're going to go buy in 2020. So this is a movement that is gaining steam, especially since April, May, since COVID-19 has taken off and has gone out of control in the United States. Particularly swing states like Arizona, very out of control, Florida, very out of control, Georgia not doing too great, Texas isn't doing too great either. Even California actually isn't doing horribly, but they still have a bad amount of cases. So, so this movement is definitely going to take place in 2016 and in 2020. It took place in 2016, but it's going to have a bigger impact because Joe Biden is more centrist than Hillary Clinton was. And he does have he has less scandals, and he has more appeal to the GOP than Hillary Clinton did, because Hillary Clinton, she was more divisive than Biden is, and that definitely does help the Democrats out. And remember that there are a lot of notable Republicans who are endorsing Trump, like former House Speaker John Boehner, John Kasich, who's actually going to speak at the DNC. Lisa Murkowski is considering not endorsing him. Mitt Romney, a former 2012 presidential candidate for the GOP. Jeb Bush isn't going to. Nor is former President George W. Bush. Colin Powell's not going to. The list goes on and on. Carly Fiorina's not going to. So we have a lot of the conservatives who have been, like in the spotlight, like even like 2016, John Kasich finished third in the Republican primaries. So this certainly is a movement that will have an impact on this election, and I'm actually interested to see how far it takes Biden.
Yeah, so you're right about that. I mean, but I feel also like the anti-Trump movement is a thing. There's always anti-incumbent movements, and I think, generally speaking, the Democrats are like politicizing, and they're like, the way they've marketed this is amazing. I mean, truly a very good campaign they're running with the anti-Trump movement. Because I mean, I would also say, I mean, with the anti-Trump movement, I think the COVID-19, when it first started, that wasn't a big issue for him. What really did it for him was Black Lives Matter, which we're going to get into later. But Black Lives Matter really created and steamed the Trump anti-Trump movement and made it grow a lot more. Now, I mean, I would be conservative in saying that the anti-Trump movement is this huge thing that's going to take over the nation. By conservative, I mean, I'm not going to believe it completely. I mean, not ideologically conservative, but I mean, generally speaking, the anti-Trump movement, or anti-whatever, I mean, there's people who are for something and against something. There's something to know. The Democrats have been able to get a lot of support from the Republicans, but then also consider there is a somewhat chunk of Republican voters, or Democratic voters actually, that are flipping parties. I have a lot of people in my comment sections who have honestly said, I'm flipping for Trump this time around because of this, and they tell me their stories. It's just things that I've seen from a lot of people, and not to say that the anti-Trumpers don't exist, because they definitely do. And when they flip from Republican to Democrat, again, they do, because they have projects like the Lincoln Project and Republicans against Trump.
The Republican voters against Trump.
Yeah, so there is on both sides of the aisle, which I think is a point that needs to be made. But I would say the anti-Trump movement is one of the best things for Biden if he can politicize it correctly. If he politicize it, I mean, everything is how you politicize it and how it succeeds and how it seems. I mean, these politicians, essentially what they want to do is they want to get your vote. So they're trying to find the best way to sell you something. So it's, generally speaking, marketing. The Democrats and the Biden campaign, like I said, amazing job marketing the anti-Trump movement, which is really helping them in the swing states. Will they completely flip the whole country? Probably not, but give them a lot of gains in a lot of places. So, UEP?
Yeah, I definitely agree that there are people who are flipping from Democrat to Trump, but remember, there were a lot of Obama Democrats who are Rust Belt voters who flipped for Trump in 2016. Most of them are coming back to Trump or to Biden because Biden is very, very Rust Belt friendly, kind of like Obama was. But there are some who are going to stay with Trump, and that is a fact. There are also some people, like I'd say like maybe 3-5% of Clinton voters who are going to go to Trump this time around. But remember that double that of the Trump vote is going to go to Biden this time around. So there is an anti-Biden movement, but it's much smaller than the anti-Trump movement. So I did want to clear that up.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I mean, that's something to note, especially because politics is just so heated these days that, generally speaking, everything is divisive. You're either for something or against something. There's no in the middle. There's like, if you're in the middle, you're ready to take punches from both sides. So that is something that not many people can do. I mean, I'm technically like in the middle because I'm very like independent and unbiased. So I mean, in my comment sections, for example, since I'm not either anti-Biden or anti-Trump, I get a lot of punches from both sides of the aisle. So that's something interesting to see. So UEP, any last comments on this topic?
I'm just going to say that this movement does have an impact on the election, and that it's probably going to, help Biden in states like Ohio because of John Kasich and John Boehner being from there. It's also probably going to help Biden in places, that are more, like Georgia is a very kind of establishment type GOP state that doesn't love Trump, but still will grudgingly vote for him. So, yeah, overall, it helps Biden a lot. But there are certainly Trump voters flipping, or Clinton voters flipping to Trump. But again, very small amount of them.
So this is a big movement, and it's something definitely that if Joe Biden can keep politicizing perfectly, and marketing the way that he is, and other Democratic groups are or other projects or people that are flipping, they're marketing it very well and making their voice heard. I'm getting so many different recommended pages on YouTube about the Lincoln Project and about Republican voters against Trump, which is very interesting. And I see some of their videos and see some of the testimonials. But yeah, so that is a very interesting topic and a very big race changer for Joe Biden. So let's move on to the next topic, which is electability. So generally speaking, with the electability topic, it's more Joe Biden looks a lot more presidential than Trump. And it's the fact that Donald Trump is not very presidential. Many traditions have been broken by the Trump administration. And just that Biden is the Washington insider who will do all these traditions and all these different things. So it becomes of an issue, for Biden, that a lot of people do want someone to be presidential. But then there's other people that do want to be outsiders. Electability is a good thing for Biden at this point. So, UP, do you want to say anything on the matter?
I actually have a lot to say on this because Joe Biden, first of all, his whole campaign, he would not have gotten this far. And he certainly wouldn't have gotten the nomination for the Democrats if he hadn't ran a campaign based around beating Donald Trump. Because the Democrats, they want to beat Trump and they want to see him gone. That's why people like Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg didn't succeed, because they were moderates, but they still didn't gain the traction because they didn't get the, I just want to see Trump gone, I don't care who it is kind of voters. Biden got those because Biden, he polls very well against Trump, as we are learning. And he also, don't forget, is from the swing state of Pennsylvania. And he does very well with black voters. He won them in the primaries. And he also does very well with the Rust Belt swing voters. And he brought them out in the primary to vote for him. That's why he won so big in Minnesota. That's why he won big in Michigan. That's why he won big in Wisconsin. So, in Indiana. But Indiana's not really in play for Joe Biden. So, yeah, that's certainly going to be something to watch. I also want to talk about kind of what Purple touched on. That Joe Biden, in a way, is more presidential than Trump, but he also isn't too establishment. Like Hillary Clinton was the definition of establishment. Joe Biden, he's a bit more brash. Like he talks, kind of like the middle class people in Pennsylvania, or like not trying to be stereotypical, but I've gotten in my comment section. Joe Biden talks like us in Pennsylvania because he's brash and he's not as politically correct as people like Hillary Clinton were. Back in 2016, because Hillary Clinton, she bragged about being presidential. Joe Biden doesn't do that, but at the same time, people know that he's a moral person, and he is a moral person. I'm not biased, but Joe Biden is a very good person. So yeah.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, morals and things like that come into play a lot more than because morality is a very bad question to answer, because I guess everyone has good morals. Because, it's hard to judge people off their morals because, people think of different things differently and everyone is different in their own ways. So, a lot of people do value morals more than everything. And
there are those people.
Yeah. Joe Biden appeals to those people. There's people that do not care about morals or anything, and they just care, I just want the job to get done. So, that's where a lot of the more... the worser comments for Trump come, the Trump supporters, that see some weird things. Those supporters are the type of people that want to get things done. But most of America really wants someone that's presidential a little bit, or a little bit more. How do I say this without being a little bit more moral? Donald Trump. I'm not saying that he's completely immoral, because he does have some morals. It's not completely perfect. Again, no one is perfect ever in life, but he still does have some morals, which is something to note as well. But Joe Biden has a lot more qualities of someone who's very moral.
Yeah, and I think that this ties into our next issue about how Joe Biden is more presidential than Trump.
Yeah, so presidentiality, and that's another thing. You just have to think about it like this. It's pretty much just how you present yourself when you're negotiating, when you're speaking to the public and things like that. So I'm going to give you guys an example. So I was taking a course at Duke University over the summer, and I was learning about international politics. So there's this book by a famous theorist. His name was Machiavelli. And he was talking about how politicians, they just have to act different ways in different areas to seem more presidential. So, I mean, with the people, you have to be nice and completely like them, go down like a middle-class Joe type of person. When you're meeting with the politicians and other people in power, you have to be serious and put your negotiation cap on. And when you're meeting with other people that are, or when you're giving a speech, you have to sound genuine and things like that. So those type of things, we definitely see all qualities with Biden. He's stronger with the people who are the ones that actually give the power, compared to Trump, who's a little bit less strong with the people and actually going out and walking around and like holding babies and things like that. I mean, not that Donald Trump doesn't hold babies in campaign rallies or anything, but Donald Trump's a better person. I would compare it like this. Biden is a very good person with his morals, which is very important to a lot of voters, but Trump is, I would say, a little better when it comes to getting things done. And although it might be with a lot of force, it's still getting things done. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. I mean, and how historically we've seen many theorists talk about how electability is directly related to some of the things I just mentioned.
I think I'm ready to move on.
So let's move on, and we're going to talk about, I think this is our fourth topic, if I'm correct.
This is our fourth topic.
Normalcy and COVID-19. So, I mean, COVID-19 has been this ridiculous thing. I mean, maybe even a month, maybe early 2019, we wouldn't have even thought that the 2020 election was going to be held during a pandemic. I mean, unless you're Bill Gates, who, I mean, kind of knew this was happening, I guess, because he kind of said, get ready because there's a pandemic coming soon. Essentially, the election was kind of like a surprise. This is going to be our biggest surprise. And COVID-19 has brought many economic damages and economic changes to the U.S., health changes to the U.S., and we've lost over 150,000 Americans over COVID-19. So this is going to be a very big issue in the election, and I think a lot of people just want to get back to normalcy.
Yes, people, I've never been craving going back to school as much as I am right now, because I do not want to do online school but people want they want to get back to what we were feeling back in February of 2020 or January, back before this pandemic occurred in America. And Donald Trump is not a normal president by no standard at all. The stuff he says, he says whatever first comes to mind, and we've never had a president who has denied the existence of, a looming threat to America. But Donald Trump is not a normal president. Joe Biden would be. Joe Biden is a lot more calming, and, people's blood pressure doesn't, raise when they see Joe Biden talking, because Joe Biden is just generally more level-headed than Donald Trump is. And that's just a fact. Now, you can talk about policies, but I'm not going to talk about that. Joe Biden certainly is more presidential, kind of like we said, and he does represent a return to normalcy, whereas Donald Trump is kind of like, do you want to keep going on this path that we're going down right now? And I think that most of America does not, and I think that's going to definitely tip the scales in Joe Biden's favor.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, when it comes to normalcy, Donald Trump is nothing but normal. Or, I mean, he's not normal, that's what I'm trying to say. But, I mean, Donald Trump, I feel like, anyways, it's going to be hard to get to normalcy anyways. And certainly Joe Biden will be the route to go, because Joe Biden is your stereotypical politician, which I think a lot of people right now are wanting someone stereotypical rather than someone who would do something that's kind of an outsider. So, I mean, for example, I'm going to give you an example. So today I went to the doctor's office because I had to get my checkup before I went to school.
Me too. I went to the eye doctor.
Yeah, so I had to go to get my checkup and stuff. So, I mean, it's not the same thing as we lived a couple of weeks ago. So, simple things like going to the doctor have completely changed. You have to wear your mask. You have to wait in your car. Things that are inconvenient like that. Or you can't even go out walking without having to have carbon dioxide in your face. We want normalcy. And I think most, if not all, Americans want to return to normalcy. COVID-19 has been a plague to the U.S. in general. the economy has been hard hit. People's lives are at risk. And our nation as a whole is starting to lose their minds. I mean, it's been proven that quarantine has made a lot of people do crazy things. And it's sad because, I mean, also during quarantine, you also will have people who have post-traumatic effects. Like they could have claustrophobia from staying in their house too long, or have stuff like that will cause further issues to America as a whole, which, although right immediately we won't see a lot of the effects, COVID-19 will have effects all the way until a lot of us even die in the future, if we die a lot further along in history. So that is one thing to know. And I think normalcy, Joe Biden definitely takes the cake. He's been advertising it. And that's going to be a choice some voters are going to make, especially in the Sun Belt. Most of the other parts of the country haven't been hit as hard by COVID-19. But, I mean, the Sun Belt is probably going to be the area that votes a lot most on COVID-19. So, UEP?
Yeah. I'm going to say my last topic on this one. But do remember that Joe Biden, this is very random, and I don't remember this until I saw it in a Joe Biden presidential ad on YouTube. Back in a February debate, he was I think he was talking to Senator Amy Klobuchar, and he said, there is a virus in China. It's scary. It could have an effect on America. And if I were president, I'd be saying we need our people down there. And I've seen that in like 3-4 Biden ads pretty recently. And I think it's very convincing that he shows that he hasn't been downplaying this the way Donald Trump has. Because back in February, Donald Trump didn't even know, or he probably knew, but he denied its existence. Even in March when it hit America, he said it'll be like a miracle, it'll go away, that kind of thing. And Joe Biden, he has had a very good track record in this, and I think people who are voting on COVID-19 are definitely going to go in overwhelming numbers for whoever's not the incumbent. And in this case, Joe Biden isn't the incumbent.
Yeah, so you're definitely right with that. But I think, honestly, people are not going to take into account, I think, the pre-pandemic. Because, I mean, generally speaking, this pandemic came onto us very, very rapidly. I mean, it's pretty tough, blaming one person or the other, because it's very hard. I mean, the pandemic is a thing we haven't lived in modern history. And, I mean, do I blame Trump completely, or do I blame him partially? Yes, he should have taken a lot more actions. But I think it is also pretty unfair to put everything that's happening on the pandemic on his shoulders, just because, being president of the United States is stressful in and of itself. I mean, and adding this huge thing that, like, no one knows anything about. I mean, some steps were taken immediately, but, I mean, research is still going on as we're speaking. So that's something a little bit harder to, argue. I think a lot of people are not going to put that against him. What they will put against him is his actions after we have some research, which, his actions in the last month or two, which have completely, those things are really going to affect Trump.
All
I
right.
don't know if you agree.
Yep, I agree.
So this is our COVID-19 topic. And our last topic is, I would say, one of the most controversial right now in the U.S., and it's Black Lives Matter. So, this is a very controversial topic for 2 reasons. First of all, it's kind of related. So there's a big defund the police movement, which some people think giving the police less resources would actually make them do worse things because they're under-equipped. And some thinks that giving them a lot more would just be unfair because then they're just going to go out and kill people. That's the first issue, and that's kind of the big defunding the police argument. And then there's a problem with Black Lives Matter itself. A lot of people say, a lot of people, I don't know if it's people with tinfoil hats on their heads, just saying that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. Would I call that strictly off the mat? Probably not. But they kind of lighted a movement where there has been a lot more violence in America after the Black Lives Matter movement. Do Black Lives Matter? Absolutely. All lives matter, essentially. But Black Lives Matter is a true fact that, generally speaking, African Americans in this country and Black Americans in this country have been mistreated for way too long. Now, does that give the right to absolutely everyone who wants to protest for this movement to destroy the United States, in some cases bringing down fire departments, bringing down police departments, bringing down office buildings, bringing down infrastructure that brings our cities their economy and lets us do different things around our cities? I think that is unpermissible. I mean, and it's a controversial thing, but Joe Biden is going to have to see how he handles this. So, UEP, do you want to talk and give your intro?
Black Lives Matter has kind of, for the month of June, it was all about Black Lives Matter. It's kind of died down now, but there is still certainly a lot of, there are voters who weren't going to vote because they felt that Joe Biden wasn't, actually, as involved in BLM as he is now, who are now going to be voting Democrat down the ballot because in the midterm, 90% of Democrats, 90% of black people went for the Democratic Party, so black people are overwhelmingly Democratic, and that's a fact. And Donald Trump is not going to come close to winning the black vote. That would be like Joe Biden winning the white, non-college educated vote in Texas or Oklahoma. It's not going to happen. However, what Joe Biden can do, going back to Black Lives Matter, people are really fed up right now. People are not happy with the state of the country. There was a poll taken back in June. It was 8 out of every 10 Americans think that America is out of control right now, and it's died down a bit. But Donald Trump still hasn't budged on Black Lives Matter because it's been kind of more about, he did the photo op with the Bible. He said that they were thugs in the street, all this stuff. And his approval on Black Lives Matter is abysmal. Whereas people overwhelmingly trust Vice President Biden more on race relations, and this is definitely going to help him. So I'm actually going to only say one thing about this, and I'll let Purple take over. But overall, Black Lives Matter is going to help Biden because of the fact people are really fed up with the current state of the country. And whether fairly or unfairly, they're going to put that all on the incumbent, who is Donald Trump.
Yes, you're definitely right. I mean, I would say, in my opinion, and I think in most of people's opinion, the country is in a horrible state. Because on one side, you have people who are dismissing a lot of these issues that really do matter, but then on the other side, you have a lot of violence that's ignited. So, I mean, here is the thing with Black Lives Matter. I don't want to get too controversial, but I mean, this Black Lives Matter is essentially what sparked a lot of these movements. And I think, honestly, while we have peaceably protests and things like that, it might hurt Biden just because a lot of people have said, especially in the suburbs, keep in mind, which is a very important demographic for Democrats to win if you want to win the election. A lot of people are turning away from the Democrats because of how they're strongly associating with quote-unquote peaceful protests, which some of them are not, because you have weapons of locomotive cocktails, which is like a bomb. You have some tear gases they have guns and ammo, which that is not peaceful last time I checked. So a lot of people are getting fed up with that, and they're actually flipping for Trump. So that is something else to know. I mean, when it comes to racial issues, everyone is in agreement. I think almost everyone in the nation that Black lives have been, they have not been respected as much as other lives. And that is very unfortunate because under this country's constitution, everyone is treated equal. And unfortunately, that has not been happening. Now, again, the way that people reacted in different ways, that I think should not be permissible. And those things that are the ways that burning down buildings is not protesting. That is rioting. And I think the people who are looking into it, and a lot of people are voting on specifically Black Lives Matter and the riots. Some pro-Biden, some against Biden. Nonetheless, I would say, generally speaking, Black Lives Matter has helped Biden, especially in bringing down Trump.
Overall, now, yes, it has.
Yeah, so, but you have to think about the little amount of people who are thinking in the mentality, why would you destroy the city? Why would you, burn down a lot of these cities or go down and, some of these things that have been fed through Black Lives Matter. I don't know if you agree with me that it's two different things. I mean, there is Black Lives Matter, the peaceful part, and then there's Black Lives Matter and the kind of the things that sparks with the more unpeaceful part.
Yeah, so I'm going to wrap this up for me, but there definitely are people who are burning down buildings, and that makes me mad because they're making a good cause, BLM, look like a terrorist organization because they're burning down buildings. That's stupid, and people who are doing that are, that's a horrible thing to do because it kind of it makes the whole movement look bad.
Yeah, but then I forgot to mention something. They've tried to do other things, that are not burning down buildings, and it's we're going to stop the economy for one whole day. Which, again, those are not good ideas, but I mean, it's what they're trying to do.
If the economy stopped for a day, that would be a disaster. Like, that, I cannot overstate how bad that would be.
Exactly. So, I mean, is the organization and what they're standing up for a good cause? Yes. But is the way that they're trying to do it a good way to do it? Personally speaking, I would say no. I mean, why would you stop the whole economy for a day? Or why would you burn down buildings that grant you different rights? I mean, for example, why would you burn down, for example, in Miami we had a courthouse that was burned down. That's where the rule of law, where you're given equal protection under the law, is you're destroying all of that. So that is what I do not support. I do support the movement as a whole that Black Lives Matter should matter more, and they should be cared about like any other life in the United States. But again, getting through those things, I don't think that's acceptable. So you do?
Okay, so I've said I'm going to wrap this up 3 times, and I mean it this time. Black Lives Matter, but people should not be burning down buildings. And overall, the BLM movement is going to help turn out for Biden, kind of going back to our first topic. And people who are burning down buildings, it's kind of stopped, so I don't think it'll have a lasting impact. But it has flipped maybe a couple voters across the country. But overall, it's definitely helping Biden. And that's why I put it on this list.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, all of it just really helps out with the Biden administration. Look at me, with the Biden VP. Kind of, all of these things are adding up towards a Biden victory. Now, I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, but all of these different things, while there be a major Biden gain, Donald Trump is still making somewhat of his base excited due to some of the things. So, I mean, with Black Lives Matter, it's what I said with the burning down of buildings and things like that. That gets the Republicans kind of mad. With the COVID normalcy, there's the argument that, I mean, everyone that would have sat in the position of Donald Trump would have done something pretty similar. So, I mean, these things, honestly, they change quickly, and there's no way to tell if someone would have done it better or worse. So, I mean, this is just a great example. And yeah, so we're going to wrap this up and go into our outro. And we want to thank all of you for watching. And we want you guys to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when each of us post our video. So we have a goal to reach 300 subscribers probably really soon. I mean, I'm pretty close, and UAP is pretty close. I wish we could do it. Can we do it by today? And for my channel and UAP as well, can we get UAP to 300 subscribers by today? And I'm really thankful for you guys for watching. UAP, do you have anything else to say?
Thank you guys so much for watching. Me and Purple do this every week. So if you missed last week, go ahead and search up just Purple Projections Podcast, and it'll come up first thing on YouTube. Believe me, I've checked before. Also, I believe Purple is currently at 283 subscribers, so he's 17 away from 300. So if we get him to 300, that would be awesome. I'm currently at 267, so I'm a little behind, but we're still close to 300 overall. So I hope that you'll give me a chance and subscribe to me. And yeah, I enjoy doing this, and I hope to see you all next week.
And yeah, I mean, this was a very fun episode to film, and I feel like Biden's chances of victory are very high right now. And taking in consideration the effects of the things that we're seeing, it may be more likely. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.